Thank you, sir. Honored and privileged. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I'm overwhelmed. I'm, of course, honored and humbled by this, Professor Suresh, Professor Chaudhary, Dr. Pathak. I'm really, a filmmaker. I'm an accidental teacher. I'm not an academic. I'm not a researcher. My research is my scripts, my films that I make that people see. I've got a lot of awards for making films. This is the first one I've got for teaching. So, tahe dil se aap logon ka shukriya. Thank you very much. And Joy ma'am, can I do a quick presentation? You said I have 5-7 minutes.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir.
And Professor Suresh, I entirely agree with you, and I'm going to come to that in a minute. When you say Indian languages as opposed to regional versus Bollywood, some people don't like the word Bollywood. I have no problems with it personally. Again, I'm not an academic. What you're going to hear are my personal thoughts that are put together. What I'd like to do is share a PowerPoint that I've quickly put together. And please let me know when you can see it.
We can see it, sir. It's visible.
Right. Fantastic. So, whenever I talk about anything, and in this case, regional/Indian cinema, I could finish this in one sentence. The potential of regional cinema, fantastic. Challenges, right now, none whatsoever, I feel. Having said that, whenever I teach my students, I start with history, and we have to go all the way back to what I call mute cinema, because that cinema was not silent. It was mute, it did not speak. But that cinema at the beginning of the last century, 1884, end of the century before that, was mute, but it was universal. Everybody understood the cinema. And just to give an example of Mr. Charlie Chaplin, he was a citizen of the world. In fact, he was born in the UK. He lived in the US for 40 years, never took a passport in the US. Got into trouble because of his left leanings, had to leave the country. But all over the world, people recognized his cinema, and they felt connected to it because there was no dialogue in it. Of course, in 1927, with the advent of sound, culture came into cinema. And with culture came language, and with language, we started to see different cinemas as opposed to a universal world cinema. In the First World War, German soldiers, British soldiers, all were found with the picture of the same Danish actress in their pocket, because again, cinema was universal. But with the advent of culture and language, with the advent of sound, language comes in and culture comes in. This, of course, is 1932, 5 years after sound came to cinema in the West and Hollywood, Alam Ara, and as you can see, it's advertised as the all-talking, all-singing, all-dancing film, and Indian cinema was never the same again. We are a musical people. We sing when we are born. We sing when we die. We have songs for everything. Birha, your husband goes away, Birha ka gana. Your husband comes home, Milan ka gana. We have a song for every season. We have a rag for every time of the day. So obviously our storytelling is intricately tied up with singing, dancing, and our storytelling is songs. Even the Veds are written in verse. All of our liturgy is in verse. So it's no surprise that once Alam Ara came, it became the norm for Indian cinema to sing. And when that happened in 1932, the doors to Indian audiences were shut for non-Indian cinema because they didn't have songs. In India, of course, before sound, we had silent cinema, so to speak, pre-sound, mute cinema. And Kolhapur was a center which moved to Pune. I'm talking about Prabhat, and of course there was New Theatre. Somehow they all ended up in Bombay around the time sound came, and a lot of people from Bengal, New Theatres moved. And even in India, language at that time started to separate different cinemas of India. But I agree with Professor Suresh that what is considered Bollywood is even an Indian, in a way, regional cinema. Yes, it has more reach because there is a strict divide between North India and South India. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. And I know Bengalis. I know people from Bangladesh, actually, where Professor Chaudhary is, who've told me they've learned Hindi by watching mainstream Hindustani cinema, which is also known as Bollywood. What is this divide we're talking about? Actually, I'll come to that in a second. Really want to quickly talk about Hollywood, which is the dominant filmmaking industry in the world today. 70–80% of their revenues come from international sales. They've spelled the death knell for many erstwhile vibrant film industries. As most people here would know, the Danish film industry, Italian film industry, Argentina, England, France, Germany. But still, they only have 3% penetration in India. Now, that number has gone up as far as box office goes because of multiplexes and tickets cost more. Some people, of course, like Avatar, for example, do better. But mota 97% of Indians prefer Indian cinema. And why is that? Indian mainstream cinema is not considered cinema in the West. It is not taken seriously. Bollywood is considered a fad, quirky, non-conventional. Primarily because of these four things. Our cinema does not respect the continuum of time and space, which is the basis. The main rule of cinema is continuity. We are not concerned about that because of the way we tell our stories. The second thing Western cinema is built on is realism, verisimilitude. We don't believe in that. Boy looks into girl's eyes, camera defocuses, they're singing and dancing in Egypt. The Western audience is, how did they get a visa? We're like, we don't care. Enjoy the song. And of course, songs, because it is such an intricate part of our storytelling and over-the-top acting. All of these are integral parts of Indian cinema that a Western audience gets pulled out of. The suspension of disbelief is shattered when any of these things happen. But we have it in our civilization. Adrishya ho jana, prakat ho jana. So the continuum of time and space doesn't really exist in our storytelling. I'm talking about the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. So, of course, 97% of Indians prefer Indian cinema. And it is no wonder. Talking about, Bollywood real quick, I want to bring something in. I'm sure most of you know that Nigeria makes the most films in the world when we're talking about feature films, 2,000 plus. So when I went to Lagos, I went to Nigeria. I was so excited about seeing Nigerian cinema. I told my host to take me to multiplexes. All I saw there were Hollywood films. So those 2,000 films in Nigeria went straight to CDs or DVDs, and they were sold on the streets. And 2,000 films are made. But when we are talking about the 2,000 odd, just under films that are made in India, I'm talking about films that go through the Central Board of Film Certification, CBFC. These are films that are certified by this organization, which means that those are films that are actually have the potential of being seen by audiences. Here is the most interesting thing that this is from the KPMG report that comes out every year, and Vicky Frames and Ujjwala and gone there often together even. What you'll see here is that, and the next slide real quick. I believe this is 2018 or 19, just before the pandemic. So if you look at it, Hindi films is 265, Tamil 310, Telugu 325, Kannada 210, Malayalam 150. And together, they are more than 50% of the films made in India. So calling Indian cinema Bollywood is a big injustice to Indian cinema, I think. Yes, as I said, north of India, the Indo-Gangetic Plain, the cow belt, politically very strong, independence movement. But once they tried to make Hindi the national language, obviously the four states in the south rebelled against them. And I just want to give two examples of this loss in translation from regional cinema to when we make, Ms. Datta gave amazing examples of films like Drishyam that have been made into Hindi. I want to talk about Mr. Priyadarshan, his film that was made into, somebody help me out here. Juhi, what was that film with Akshay Kumar and Sunil Shetty?
Suryavanshi.
No, Paresh Rawal also.
Sir,
Hera Fairy.
Hera Fairy.
Hera
Right.
Fairy, Hera Fairy. So Hera Fairy is a Tamil film, is a Malayali film made by Priyadarshan. And really, what is the point of that cinema? The point is that the Malayalam, the Kerala, the economy has gone to the Gulf, and jobs are at a premium. That's why one man and one woman are fighting for a job. That does not translate to Bombay. More important, Roja, and I was talking to Mr. Hariharan, who was the director of LV Prasad Film School in Chennai. He has this wonderful take on Roja. What is Roja? Roja is about a Tamil girl from South India going to the north and bringing her husband back. Right? It is like the Yamraj has taken your husband away. You go and get your husband back from North India. And who's North India? The people who are trying to impose Hindi on you. Somebody going from Bombay to Kashmir is not the same thing, does not cut it, which is why regional cinema is so beautiful, because there's a lot lost in translation. We make meaning of who we are, what we are, and which is why these 4 cinemas have a dedicated audience. I was shocked initially when I first found out the amount of money that was spent on a Telugu film. And then I realized that every person in Andhra Pradesh at that time, and today Telangana also, they go to theaters 3-4 times to watch the same film. That is the dedication towards regional cinema. And I would like to finish with one more thing about the OTT platforms. Just like there are OTT platforms that play mainstream Hindustani cinema, every single language, including Bengali, Marathi, Malayalam, Kannada, have their own OTT platforms that are playing these cinemas. So to round up where I started, what is the potential of the cinema? It's tremendous. Challenges right now, I don't see any. And I will end there, Dr. Pata. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a very brief at the same